All right, is everybody seeing the screen? Project 3?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, great. All right. So Project 3, we're going to be doing a step-by-step cookbook. The objectives of Project 3 are we're going to be considering editorial design, understanding the basics of page layout, using a found recipe as copy for our new step-by-step cookbook layout design, utilizing research and brainstorming to generate ideas and focus design. We're going to practice setting long pieces of text, learning to design strategies of enhancing readability and comprehension. We're going to use size, posture, alignment, leading, tracking, kerning, and color to produce excellent legibility and readability. We're working on understanding grid systems and bringing a sense of proportion and order and continuity. Oh my gosh, I can't even say the word today. Continuous design, we'll call it that way. Use the modular grid system. Consider typographic details. Learn the finer typographic details that use size, posture, alignment, leading, and tracking. We're going to understand typography's relationship to design through exploring typography's usefulness as an important element of communication design. Using type, we're going to apply basic principles of design, balance, gradation, repetition, contrast, harmony, dominance, unity, etc. to resolve design. We're going to be applying knowledge of typographic hierarchy. We're going to continue learning design tools and techniques, understanding Adobe InDesign, strengths and weaknesses as a design tool. We're going to become fluent with typography and design features in InDesign. All right, so I'm going to start by sharing with you a variety of cookbooks that I pulled and took some photos of, kind of sharing with you, identifying the different parts of each one of these cookbooks. So each one of these has a headline that identifies the recipe name. Next, you're going to see a description of the recipe. Like, what is it that this recipe is all about? A description, an introduction to the recipe. Then there's going to be a section that is the ingredients and how we treat the ingredients. The instructions of how to prepare the dish. Information like how many people does it serve? So when we're thinking about a recipe design and a page layout, we're going to have images of the finished product. So you can see there's a photograph of the finished product. There's going to be step-by-step instructions, the ingredients, how many it serves, the name, the instructions. All of these things have hierarchy, and we're going to be addressing that hierarchy. You can also see, because it's part of a book, it'll also have a folio or a page number, along with information. For example, this one says chicken and eggs, meaning that it's in the section of chicken within the cookbook. Here's the next one. And this one as well, another cookbook, Healthier Together, this one's called, and it has the headline, the ingredients list, and in the ingredients list at the top, I didn't highlight it separately, you can see it serves 2. The instruction, the introduction to the recipe, the step-by-step instructions, and of course on the right here is the full photo, the glamour shot, if you will, of the final dish. And so I've taken the liberty to photograph multiple pages of different cookbooks to show you different ways cookbooks are addressing these. And I also want to highlight that a lot of cookbooks have what we call sidebars. And on our cookbook, we too will have a sidebar. And a sidebar is another piece of information. It's not related to the recipe, but it's part of the overall cookbook story. So for example, this one is a sidebar about butter. And so it's highlighting one ingredient and giving people information about that ingredient that they may want to know regarding how they use it in the recipes that they're using. So I'm going to be pointing out throughout some of these examples, things like sidebars, which, as you can see, are treated a little differently. So it still has a subhead, it has body copy, but you can see there's, for example, on this design, there's a color behind it. There's something that's separating it from the recipe. So we understand this information is not part of the recipe. It's different, it's separate. Here's another book, Anthony Bourdain's Appetites. This is a kind of more of an artsy book. So it shows like the hand-drawn type for the headers. And it has a lot more editorial and far less or far smaller amounts of ingredients and instructions. And here's an example of step-by-step images. So this is the recipes that you're going to receive are also going to have step-by-step images as well as final beauty shots. And you can choose to use the step-by-step images or not. Those will be optional. You do need to show always the finished product. Every recipe, everyone wants to know what it looks like final, so you know if you've made it correctly. So you definitely need to show the final finished beauty shot. But you'll also have an opportunity to do something like this where you'll show step-by-step photos of the process. So here's another one. So you can have the headline, you see it serves 4 to 6. So an introduction, ingredients, and step-by-step instructions along with the beauty shot. Here's a sidebar. This one's taking up a whole page. And this is just, again, part of the cookbook design. It's showing something that's in addition to the recipes, another thing to kind of tell the story of this cookbook. Also notice that it's a numbered list. So the designer here chose to highlight the numbers, make them much larger than the size of the copy. Also, they've embedded the subhead into the first sentence, changed the color of it so it really stands out, and then has the rest of the information in black. So really playing with color, scale, and organization. So another one with the headline, servings, introductions, ingredients list, and step-by-step. Now, some cookbooks have different themes. For example, well, they all have different themes, but some of them have different focus. And so, for example, this cookbook is focused on how long it takes. So like the Ina Garten one is about like a celebrity chef. So is the Anthony Bourdain. So those are like celebrity chef cookbooks. This one's about not necessarily the chef, but how quickly you can get dinner on the table. So this one you can see is highlighting over on the left page, prep time, 15 minutes. So it's telling us that, yeah, you're going to be able to get this meal on the table in 15 minutes. So this one isn't highlighting, you're still going to see that it serves 4 and all of that, but they've added an extra piece of information about like quick eats, like how quickly can we eat. So this one's about great food fast. So everyone is about telling us how quickly we can cook it. And every recipe you can see highlights the prep time. This one also is about time. And so this one's called Dinner in a Flash. And this one is 20 minutes, serve 6. And in addition to this, you can see they have little cook's tips in the corner. So like little information about the ingredients, little tips, tidbits. Also, this one is a Weight Watcher. So it's also about like health. So it's like how much more nutrition information, how much calories and things like that are you getting with each one of these recipes. So sometimes you want to incorporate, they have even more information beyond the recipe for the reader. Also, things like vegetarian, highlighting within the book, oh, this is a vegetarian recipe, under 20 minutes, how many it serves, and how many calories. Gluten-free, highlighting different food issues that people might have. Here's another celebrity chef one. And this one also highlights, for example, this is a vegetarian dish. So it has a V highlighting the vegetarian. This on the left page has the headline, how many it serves, the introduction, the ingredients list, the step-by-step, and then on the right page, Pasta Rules is their sidebar. So this is separate, and you can notice again, a color is used behind it to kind of separate it from the recipe, and it has a different typeface treatment for the headline than you notice the recipes headline. Notice the recipes headline is a bold, upper and lowercase type size that is smaller. And then if we look at the Pasta Rules, it is a like a light. It's a larger type size, but a lighter weight. And then of course it also is background. Also notice that they're using color for the headlines, the blue. Everything doesn't always have to be in black. You can also incorporate color into your headlines and things like that. So here on the right, pesto is a sidebar. On the left, parsley lemon pesto with farfalle is the recipe. And so I put a lot of examples here so that, and I have this slide deck in our Blackboard too, so you can take a look at it. So you have samples of cookbooks. Any questions or thoughts as you're looking at some of these different cookbooks that I'm sharing? How many of you are familiar with cookbooks or have used cookbooks? A few of us? Any cookbooks?
Do YouTube videos count?
Nope. But I do know that's how a lot of people are learning how to cook now is through YouTube. I get that. So what I want us to do is to get our hands on a cookbook, whether you go to the library and check out some cookbooks at the library. So you have a couple. I want you to get 2 cookbooks. Stop at mom's house, pick up a cookbook at mom or grandmother's house, pick one up at the library, borrow from a friend. But I want you to go ahead and get 2 cookbooks, printed real cookbooks, not looking at them online, not looking at YouTube, but actual printed cookbooks, because what we're going to be designing is for print, as if we are designing a cookbook, a real printed cookbook. So in order for you to have a concept of what that looks like, we need to do some research and look at real printed cookbooks for our research.
So
And what
magazines doesn't count, right?
No, I mean, I guess if it's a cooking magazine, like, do you mean like it's
Like some the magazine that they have a lot of recipes inside.
ideally it would be a cookbook because it's going to be based on a book design. We're going to be looking at book design. So in order for you to have an understanding, and a magazine behaves a little differently because it'll have advertisements in it and things like that. So it's a little different than a book. But you don't have to buy one. You can go to the library and pick one up. You can borrow from a friend.
I have a lot.
I do too. I do too. I love cookbooks. but I love them for this project because it allows us to have a lot of understanding of organization on a grid and using hierarchy, which is going to be important for our learning. So I'm going to be giving you recipes. You're not going to have to come up with recipes. I'm going to give you all 2 recipes and a sidebar. And so you're going to be laying out for this assignment 2 spreads and a spread is 2 pages. So that means you're going to design 4 pages of a cookbook. And the 4 pages are going to incorporate 2 recipes and a sidebar. And that's what we're going to be working on for Project 3. But before we get to laying out any of the type or any of the recipes that I give you, we need to start with research. And so the first step of research for us is going to be to get our hands on some actual cookbooks. So however you need to find cookbooks, I want you to get 2 different cookbooks. And now we're going to come back to using our type gauge ruler. How many of you still have your type gauge ruler somewhere? Because what I want you to do is take your type gauge ruler, and once you have your recipe book, your cookbook on hand, I want you to take that type gauge and measure what scale is the type on that page for a recipe. So what size is the body copy? What size is the leading? What size is it for like headlines? What is it for subheads? What is it for body? What is it for the ingredients or captions? All those different, we're going to dissect. So if you all remember science class where you were dissecting frogs, we're going to dissect our layout. We're going to do a layout dissection, and we're going to take the cookbook and we're going to open it up to a spread, and we're going to measure using our type gauge. What size is the headline? What size is the leading? What size is our body copy? And I want you to lay your ruler right on the type, and then go ahead and photograph it with your phone so we can see it, and you can post it on your Slack channel. And then also go ahead and type in your notes. Oh, it's 12-point type on 15-point leading. So it's 12 over 15 would be the way we would say that in writing, like a fraction. Is everyone following? Any questions? All right, I'm going to open up the assignment sheet and kind of go through this first part with you. And I'll share my screen in just a second here. Okay. So we've already talked about our objectives. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using recipes that include step-by-step instructions to design 2 cookbook spread layouts for the recipe of our choosing. I'm going to actually hand you, I'm going to distribute recipes to all of you. You all have different recipes. Everyone's going to have a different recipe. The page size for our publication is going to be 8 by 10. The design must contain all the copy provided. So when I give you the copy, it's all going to be a Word document. Everything that I give you has to be included in your layouts ultimately. So it's going to incorporate recipe titles, the servings, the ingredients, folios or page numbers, captions, footers, pantry staples, a feature sidebar. That's the sidebar. You're all going to have the same sidebar. And a burst or a violator with supplementary information. So highlighting maybe one of the recipe ingredients. So our process is going to be to research and asset collections and adjectives. So we're going to use the copy that I'm going to give you and images. I'm also giving you all the images. So you're going to be receiving all of the assets for this layout from me. And it's going to be based on a step-by-step cookbook design. We're going to retrieve the text and images I send you. You're going to use all the copy. And you can choose the step-by-step pictures. They're optional. You definitely need to use the finished dish picture, but you don't necessarily have to use all the step-by-step images. You're going to read the recipe provided and do research on cookbooks. So we're going to start off this week by getting our hands on a couple cookbooks, and we're going to understand the cookbook design by really doing our cookbook dissection. So that's what we're going to start with this week. I also want you to think about, once you get this, when you start looking at these different cookbooks, recognizing what kind of style do we want to focus our design on. We want to compile a list of 10 adjectives describing the cookbook's look and feel. For example, is this going to be a cookbook that's, quick and casual meals that can be done in, 30 minutes or less? Or is it going to be about healthy cooking? Or is it going to be about, world cooking or ethnic cooking? Or are we going to be looking at a specific ingredient like just chicken or just vegetarian, or, and it'll depend on the recipes you're given, obviously. The idea is that you want to, once you get your recipes, you want to think about what is going to be your focus for your overall cookbook design. Because every design, as I just shared with you in the examples I gave, kind of have a different attitude. Like if it's a celebrity cookbook, it might have the look and feel of that celebrity. Anthony Bourdain is kind of considered like a rebel chef, so his feels very rebellious. Ina Garten is, kind of a classic cook, and so hers feels very classic and very sophisticated. She's all about having the fancy dinner parties. So, every personality might have a different look and feel, or it could be about health or any of these other things. So you can decide about what kind of look and feel you want to create for your cookbook style. You can also use this project if you are someone who wants to highlight your illustration skills or explore, hand lettering for some of the headers or something like that. This is a project that will allow you to do that. So in addition to the images I give you and the type I give you, you can add to that. You can add additional imagery of ingredients or other elements or design elements to the pages. You can make it more illustrative if you want to show off your illustration skills, or photography if you want to photograph the ingredients that are in your recipe and show off some of your photography skills. You can do that as well. You don't have to, but that's definitely open in this project for you. Any questions before I move on? The next step, after we do our dissection and kind of have an idea of looking at what type sizes that cookbooks that we've researched have, we're going to start our project with type studies and layout and grid sketches. We're going to be taking the grid layouts using a few paragraphs from your copy, considering legibility and readability, exploring different paragraph settings with your typeface. Try the text with different combinations of text typefaces, point sizes, line spacing, and line lengths, column widths. This goes back to Project 3. Or actually, take it back. This is Project 3. This has to be edited, sorry. The simple type studies that we're going to be doing are going to help us inform our readability of our paragraphs, and our settings will in turn help the creation of layout sketches and subsequent grids. I'm going to walk us through grid studies next class. We're going to go through grid sketches and type studies next class. But first, before we get into that, I want to have you dissect and look at actual cookbooks. So that'll help inform your understanding of scale before we jump into our own type studies. So I'm going to pause here. And talk about next steps with researching cookbooks and using our type gauges. Any questions?
Really quick, you said you want these cookbooks by Thursday?
Right, I want you to have, before Thursday's class, have looked at two different cookbooks, and dissected one spread from each, understanding what type sizes are on the page for your cookbooks.
What if I can guarantee that I don't have time to do that? I work really long shifts.
Okay,
I
and
it's
meaning you
just-
don't have the ability to get a cookbook by then?
Yeah,
You mean-
yeah. By the weekend, over the weekend I could, but by Thursday's not plausible.
Well, I'm gonna need it well, do what you can. If you can't, you might have to wait and do yours over the weekend.
Okay.
But I would like to get as many of us that can do it as possible so that we can talk about the next phase, which is gonna be those grids. We'll talk about grid sketches and type studies. If we can't, I mean, let's just say it this way. I mean, if you can get it done by Thursday, it will help. You just keep moving forward. If you can't, you'll just, when you get it done, you'll be able to move on to the next phase. You can't move on to the next phase until you do it, but that's okay. We'll at least we'll just keep working through as we can.
Okay.
I understand it's hard for some of our schedules if you don't have a cookbook on hand, and I get that. Because some of us don't have one handy, and it's gonna take a minute to get one, because I know we don't all have cookbooks anymore. Those days are over, I know.
Thank you.
Yes, Ying.
Questions that you say that two cookbooks and one recipe for each, or how many pages?
Just
That-
one spread for each cookbook.
Just one spread?
Yeah. Because the type sizes will be the same throughout the whole book. So I just need
Yeah.
one spread from each cookbook, two different cookbooks, and then one spread from each of the cookbooks. So like the spread is what I just showed you in my presentation. Those were a spread.
Oh, because I find some cookbooks that they might have like the picture first, then the next one, the whole spread, that's the recipe, the steps. So that if like that will count as 3 pages, right?
That's okay, yeah. The main thing is we're just looking at the text. It doesn't matter about the pictures, so ignore the pictures, just focus on the type.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So yeah, you're right. Sometimes they'll have a whole page that's just a picture like I showed you. Ignore the pictures right now. Just focus on the type and your type gauge. Mainly what you want to do is we're dissecting it. So you want to say, okay, headline, measure it. What size is that? And it might even be bigger than your type gauge. Just see what you can get. If you can get it, figure that out as big as it is. What's the size of the headline? What's the size of a subhead, the body copy, the ingredients, the step-by-step instructions, any other type on the page. We want to identify what the leading is. In other words, we want to figure out what the baseline grid is. The baseline grid should be the leading of the body copy. Okay, that's your baseline grid. We want to figure out what that leading is. And that's, remember, we measure baseline to baseline. Okay, so we want to measure baseline to baseline. And then we want to figure out as close as we can. It's not going to be 100% accurate because typefaces are all different. We want to get an approximation of what the point size is for the body copy, the ingredients list, all the elements on the page. And why we're doing this is our research to identify what size would be appropriate for our cookbook, because we're going to do a cookbook and we need to have an understanding of what is a good size, because let's think about how we use a cookbook. A cookbook is a step-by-step user manual. It's teaching you how to do something. You're following directions. You're going to have it sitting on a counter and you have it open while you're doing the activity it's telling you to do, which is cooking. So it's open. It has to be big enough so that you can see it from laying on the counter when you're standing above it, and your hands might be dirty because they're full of the ingredients, and you got to be able to read it without having it right in your face, right? So we gotta figure out how to make it easy to be used, user friendly, because it also has to make a lot of sense and has to be well organized so people can follow along and figure out how to make the dish that your recipe is having them make. So it has to be user friendly. When we think about user experience, a cookbook is a good example. We're designing for someone to use this, to follow it very closely and make a dish that's gonna taste delicious, right? It has to be easy to follow. It can't be confusing. It has to be easy to follow so that they can follow along and end up with a meal, right? So they have to easily be able to tell, like, what are the ingredients I need? So I can pull all my ingredients out. I have to know what the step-by-step instructions are. If there's any other information I need to know, is like vegetarian, because I might be looking for a vegetarian dish. I need to know that it's vegetarian or what have you. So it's really about having us understand how to use our grid and our type layouts that make it easy for our reader to follow along and use this book. And that's where that recipe, so that's where, like, finding 2 cookbooks, researching them and dissecting them so that we have some ideas of what's out there and what people are using. And then when we come back on Thursday, we're going to talk about grid sketches. How do we sketch grids? And we're going to look at, again, those cookbook samples we have. We're going to then do some type studies, because in order to, we learned last week, in order to lay out a grid, we need to know what the body copy type size is and the leading is, in order to create a baseline grid to be the structure and the foundation of our module grid. And these will all be built on module grids. Okay, any questions? All right. I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop the recording for all. There are no questions.